All right, does everybody who's like part of the team want to come stand up here for visuals, or you guys all want to stay? Yeah, everybody, let's make it like a press conference. Yeah. Let's all do it. Okay. All right. Sorry for running a few minutes late, but here we are. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. Today, the NYCLU is announcing a new lawsuit challenging the New York Police Department's policies that target tens and thousands of Black and Latino drivers for unlawful vehicle searches. I want to thank Justin and Chris, our individual plaintiffs, who have experienced firsthand what it means to be stopped, searched, and treated as criminals for no reason other than the color of their skin. Their dignity, their courage, their resilience in the face of this injustice inspire us all. I also want to thank our organizational plaintiff, the NAACP New York State Conference, for their leadership in fighting racial injustice here and wherever it rears its ugly head. Thanks also to our co-counsel, Bronx Defenders, and Milbank, and huge gratitude to the best legal team in the world, the NYCLU legal team, whose relentless work made this case possible. For decades, the NYCLU has been a leader in the fight against abusive and racially biased policing. We see stop and frisk on wheels, and it feels like deja vu all over again. We exposed the NYPD's stop and frisk regime decades ago, when it had been hidden from the public for years. We forced the release of the department's own data that revealed a system of stops that were overwhelmingly targeted at Black and brown New Yorkers and were resulting in massive violations of civil rights. And we won court victories and policy changes and changes on the ground that caused these stops to plummet. Fast forward to today. The lawsuit we're announcing today builds directly on that legacy, and it makes clear that stop and frisk has not disappeared. It's simply shifted. What we're seeing now is stop and frisk on wheels. The routine and discriminatory searching of Black and brown drivers by the NYPD. The numbers speak for themselves. Black and Latinx drivers are respectively 10 and 6 times more likely to have their cars searched by the NYPD than white drivers in New York City. The searches are not driven by the evidence, they are driven by racial bias. This is not acceptable, and it must come to an end. That's why we're in court. Like stop and frisk, the NYPD uses vehicle searches as a tool to harass and humiliate Black and brown New Yorkers, especially men. Like stop and frisk, they almost never lead to the recovery of a weapon. And like stop and frisk, they cause real harm. They cause police brutality, psychological trauma, and breed a climate of distrust between New Yorkers and those who are sworn to protect them. Let's be clear. This surge in unlawful vehicle searches began under the Adams administration, an administration that saw aggressive policing as the solution to nearly every problem. But this policy which is so harmful, goes against what our new mayor's vision for public safety is, a vision that centers fairness and community trust. But regardless of who's in Gracie Mansion, the NYCLU will not let the NYPD treat our city like a Constitution-free zone, where Black and brown New Yorkers' rights don't matter. And that's why we're here today. You're going to hear from people who will show you exactly why this lawsuit matters. First, you'll hear from Justin Cohen, one of our individual plaintiffs, who was criminalized by the NYPD simply for driving while Black. Then you'll hear from Daniel Lambright, NYCLU's lead attorney in the case, who will explain what the lawsuit uncovered and why the NYPD's policy violates New Yorkers' rights. Then you'll hear from NAACP New York State Conference Executive Director Christopher Alexander, our organizational plaintiff, and the Bronx Defenders Executive Director Juval Scott, who will speak to how this practice hurts their clients and members. After the speakers conclude, we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. Before we go to Justin Cohen, I want to give you a 2-minute video clip.
Wait, why are you searching me?
Because when you moved around like that, that makes me think that you might be not being searched.
Okay, you don't have to be aggressive. Come on.
Listen, I'm not trying to be aggressive, but
you guys are doing this for no reason. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep.
So on May 3rd, 2023, I'm driving with my friend Tori. We went to the casino, went out. We stopped to get food, and out of nowhere, a cop pulled us over. He said I was speeding, so he pulled us over. But then he decided to pull me out the car and ask to search me and proceeded to just frisk me for no reason. And yeah, I was kind of confused because I was being respectful, I was being polite, and I was answering their questions. So for it to escalate, for them to search me and go through that, I was mad. The whole thing, the whole incident was pretty much uncalled for. It was unlawful. They searched and they frisked me and my friend multiple times. They took us to the police station, detained us for no reason. It's scary. You be treated like an animal. It's always, you know, it's sad. When you're thrown into a cage and your freedom taken away from you. It's shameful. They made me take my shoes off, or they were gonna do something, cut my laces out, so I walked out of precinct with no shoes. We weren't doing nothing wrong, we were just driving home. But I guess when you're Black in America, this what happens. The reason that I want to share this story is because I want to let people know what is happening, that in 2025, we are still being racially profiled. When I think about it, it kind of motivates me as well because it keeps me on the path and keeps me focused, knowing that I have a job to do. I have to stand for justice.
All right, I realize I should have introduced myself. I'm Donna Lieberman, Executive Director of the NYCLU. I'm an old pro at this stuff. And now I'd like to introduce Justin Cohen, who is the brave and wonderful plaintiff in this case.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank everybody for being here. My name is Justin Cohen. I'm 35 years of age, and my life forever changed on May 3rd, 2023. That night, New York police officers, they pulled me over while I was in the Bronx driving home with my friend, and it was late and it was quiet. And then that experience was very terrifying because I wasn't sure what was happening. The officers ordered us out of the vehicle, and we were frisked, and the officers searched the vehicle and asked if there were guns or anything else in the vehicle. I stayed calm and I was respectful, but inside I was afraid. They found nothing illegal, nothing at all. And still, the officers put me in handcuffs. They took us to the police station and they threw us in a cage. After an hour of detention, I was released and given a speeding ticket for allegedly speeding, but not without one last humiliation. The officers made me take off my shoes, as expressed in the video. I had to walk out the precinct barefoot. This night was traumatizing and traumatic for me, and it's hard to put in words what I felt. I was treated like, not like a human being, but like an animal. Even now, when I get behind the wheel and see a police car, my stomach drops. This is what driving while black looks like. This is not an isolated incident. It is an everyday reality for black people across this country and across New York City. It is a real traumatic and because of the racial profiling. It is the Dalton message that the police see you not as a person, but as a threat. That speeding ticket was dismissed. An independent investigation by the CCRB confirmed what I already knew, that I was being racially profiled by the police. So more than 2 years later, I still ask myself, why me? Why did this happen? And that's the reason why I'm bringing justice. And this lawsuit is because no one else should have to go through what I went through. Because in 2026, black and brown people are still racially profiled, still being searched for no reason, still being humiliated by the police simply because the color of their skin. And I am standing not just for myself, but for the countless people of color who have felt the anger, the fear, and the pain of being treated while simply going about their daily lives. We all deserve dignity, we all deserve safety, and we all deserve justice. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And now I want to introduce Daniel Lambright, who is the NYCLU supervising attorney and lead counsel on this case. Daniel?
The NYPD has a long, shameful history of intentionally targeting Black and Latino individuals for invasive and humiliating policing tactics. In 2013, a federal court declared that the NYPD's mass stop and frisk policy toward pedestrians was racially discriminatory and unconstitutional. In this lawsuit, we're targeting the NYPD's overuse of vehicle searches on Black and Latino drivers. It's a continuation of those legal efforts to rid the department of unconstitutional policing. Beyond our clients' experiences, which are core to the litigation and which truly exemplify the human toll of the NYPD's vehicle search policy, the other core aspect of this litigation is the jarring statistics calculated from the NYPD's own data. I'll run through some. In the driving population. So if you look here, this that while that white drivers drive more than Black and Latino drivers, however, they make up way less vehicle searches, and you see the clear disparities there. So the next question must be, okay, maybe there are stops that are accounting for the disparity in vehicle searches. And we look at that here in this chart, and this shows that while there are more Black people who are stopped by the police and more Latino people who are stopped by police, the amount of vehicle searches are vastly higher than the number of stops. So that is not what's feeding into those. What actually is feeding in is racial bias and racial discrimination. Additionally, we looked at so again, we have a situation where Black and Latino New Yorkers are respectively 9%, over 10, nearly 10%, and 6% more likely than white drivers to have their vehicles searched. Next slide. Okay, so again, what we found is that even though we found that in all 78 precincts, Black and Latino drivers are more likely to have their vehicles searched, the searches are concentrated in Black and Latino neighborhoods. So for example, the precincts with the highest rates of vehicle searches are the 75th precinct, where 83% of residents are Black or Latino, the 113, where 83% of residents are Black or Latino, and the 44, where 94% of residents are Black or Latino. And importantly, these fishing expeditions never turn up weapons. Over 96% of searches do not result in an arrest for criminal possession of a weapon. So these stats reflect several key aspects of the NYPD's use of vehicle searches. So in these occasions, they often begin with a minor vehicle infraction. So in Justin's case, that was allegedly for going 35 miles per hour, which that ticket was dismissed. And for situations like this, white people often, there's a situation that results in ticket or nothing. But for many Black people, particularly Black and Latino men, officers search their vehicles with no warrant, no consent, and no basis to believe that they have a weapon. Additionally, as shown by this graph, the searches are targeted in majority Black and Latino neighborhoods. These searches are frequently done by reconstituted anti-crime units that were disbanded under the de Blasio administration, but were reconstituted under the Adams administration, and that still exist. And these units have been known to engage in racist and unconstitutional policing practices. And as I mentioned before, these searches do not result in the recovery of guns. So in summation, this practice is unconstitutional, and we call on Commissioner Tisch and Mayor Mondani to take immediate steps to ensure that it comes to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And you'll have a chance to ask questions later. Now I'd like to introduce the director of the NAACP New York State Conference, which is the organizational plaintiff in this case, Christopher Alexander. Chris?
Thank you so much, Donna, Daniel, and the entire legal team here at NYCLU, the Bronx Defenders, Milbank. Justin, thank you for sharing your story and fighting for justice. My name is Chris Alexander, and on behalf of the NAACP New York State Conference, we are, I always say honored, but it's just the fight that we've been fighting for a long time. We've seen this story before. We have advocated and agitated and litigated around stop and frisk and these unconstitutional pretextual stops that have continued to occur in New York City. But this moment, it's strange because for those of you who know me and my story, I began my advocacy career dealing with the remnants of stop and frisk and the same, pretty much exact same disparities that we found in those engagements around marijuana possession. And so the similarities really are alarming. As a state conference, we are always willing to take on discrimination where we find it. We are willing to call out racial bias and animus when we see it. The hard thing about this moment is that there's so much going on in the world, and it's easy to ignore or to minimize the ongoing treatment and mistreatment of Black and brown New Yorkers that we've dealt with. As I sat here or stood here listening to Justin, it just brings me back to my own interactions, and I think for folks watching and tuning in, many Black New Yorkers will have similar stories of a discomfort when cruiser or a police vehicle or unmarked car often, and more often than not in these days, is trailing behind you and you see those lights. And you didn't do anything wrong, but you're about to get stopped and you're about to have your rights violated. That is a story that's too common for Black New Yorkers, particularly Black New Yorkers who drive. in communities like Southeast Queens. The 113th precinct is in my neighborhood. And so, this is not an uncommon story. This is not a new fight. And I think that what's important about this moment is that we don't turn away from the data. It doesn't matter that we are, turning a new leaf here in the city, and we have some new energy in Gracie Mansion. We're excited, and we wish our new mayor well. These remnants of these policies have to be addressed, and this is the best moment and opportunity to address them. Just want to emphasize here that this story is not a new one. This is a reality for Black New Yorkers. It's been a reality for Black New Yorkers. It's about time that we start to address it in a more meaningful and significant way, and we are honored to be a part of this, both at direction of our membership and the communities that they serve who dealt with fielding these calls and complaints, but also on behalf of ourselves as people who are also impacted by these policies and the way that Black and brown New Yorkers are treated. So thank you for being here, and we appreciate the work and the team here advancing this fight for justice. Thank you.
Yeah, and finally, I'd like to introduce Juval Scott, who's the director of Bronx Defenders, which is co-counsel with us on this case.
Hi, good morning. I'm Juval Scott. I'm the executive director of the Bronx Defenders. Before I begin, I'd like to thank you, Justin, for unearthing your pain in service of the community, and especially the Black community. I know it is no small feat to have done so, and you are brave, and I admire you. You inspire me as I continue to do this work. I've been a public defender for more than 2 decades now, and I've represented thousands of people in primarily federal, but also state court, and most of my clients have been Black and brown men. I want to start my remarks by saying as plainly as possible, whether or not the vehicle searches work is not the question. The Constitution doesn't allow the NYPD to violate people's rights, ever. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, not even when they find contraband or weapons. The Constitution is here to protect us all, and that includes Black and brown men. What we're seeing right now is what we've seen throughout the history of this country, and it's unconstitutional policing. Full stop. Let's call it what it is. Every single week, our attorneys represent people who are pulled over for something minor. Something like tinted windows, broken tail lights, rolling through a stop sign. Offenses that were maybe on the books before the late 90s, but enhanced in terms of enforcement after the Supreme Court decided that it was okay to stop Black and brown men if you could find a good reason for it. And now suddenly, when these offenses have been identified, people are pulled out of their car, they're searched, handcuffed, arrested, nothing is found, no weapon, no contraband, just a person whose life is now in chaos. What happened to Justin and Christopher, it's not rare. It's not even shocking, really, when you think about it. It's routine. That's the problem. That's the problem. I've stood next to people in court who lost their jobs because they were impacted by officers who were being overzealous, who were acting upon racial animus rather than someone having done something wrong, jailed overnight for nothing, jobs lost, parents miss picking up kids from school, young people who flinch every time they see a police car because they know how easily an ordinary day can turn into a nightmare. And this is happening most aggressively in places like the Bronx. One of the precincts with the highest number of vehicle searches is the 44th precinct, where 94% of the residents are Black or Latino. That precinct overlaps with one of our offices and oversees the Bronx and the Bronx Criminal Court. These are our neighbors. This is our community. And it's not new. I grew up fighting stop and frisk from the time that I was in high school in my small Midwest community. I became a public defender because I see how critical it is that we stand alongside people who are in crisis, people like my friends who I watched being targeted when I was a teenager. In 2014, the Bronx defenders challenged stop and frisk in court and won. And yet the same unconstitutional logic keeps coming back with a new name because NYPD still sees race and neighborhood as proxies for criminality. This lawsuit is about accountability, yes, but it's about more than that. It's about getting justice for people like Justin and Christopher, for preventing anyone else from experiencing what they and countless others continue to experience. We must get to a place as a society where we see finally that public safety does not come from surveillance, but instead from investing in people and opportunities and in the futures of our children. We are proud to stand with NYCLU, the NAACP, Justin, Chris, and all of our clients. And thank you to my team, wonderful Impact Litigation team who are part of this litigation. And I'll just end by saying that as long as people are punished simply for driving while Black or Latino, we will keep fighting. That is our job, and we are not backing down and going anywhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll take questions if you have any. Okay, Paul? Yeah.
I'm sorry, we'll just ask folks to state their name and their outlet, so the question will be directed to the NYCLU team, the Bronx Defenders team, and the NAACP. Plaintiff Justin won't answer questions during the Q&A, but he's available for one-on-one interviews after the press is over.
You can stay up here.
WBAI and lifelong New York. So how does this relate? Because the highways of America are sort of like this, where they're looking for drugs on the interstates, and so they're pulling people over left and right for the smallest thing, like not going from one lane to the other and not turning your blinker off until you fully make the change could be enough to get pulled over. In Nebraska, they pull off thousands of people a year looking for them taking marijuana across the country. So the Supreme Court has said this is legal. I mean, I've heard it said that vehicles are just not private anymore. They belong to the government, the inside of them, and they can do anything they want, according to recent. And then the Supreme Court, even more recently, I don't know how this relates to this, but for immigration enforcement, they fully outright legalized, racial stops. So how does this lawsuit address that kind of situation?
Okay.
You want to? So, just to, okay. Just to be clear, we are addressing the search rather than the stop itself. I think you're right that officers often can stop people for many different minor infractions, but the searches have to follow the Constitution, and they're very limited in where they can search and the justifications for why they can search. And what we've seen is that officers are searching people just based on the color, searching vehicles, just based on the color of the skin of the drivers and the passengers. That's still unconstitutional, and there's no Supreme Court case that has said that is constitutional.
And how do you prove that?
Right. So I think there are many different ways of proving it. I think one of the ways of proving it is through the jarring statistics. Other ways of proving it are through, client experiences where we have things like body cam, we have stop reports that show that there was no basis whatsoever for the officers searching our clients. And we've seen this over and over and over and over and over again.
If I could just add to your question, the Fourth Amendment doesn't permit an unconstitutional stop or seizure, and there are courts who look and analyze the data, and they analyze the scenario, and they decide based upon the constitutionality or lack thereof that a person's rights have been violated. So as a public defender, I spent a good deal of time challenging just that. The Supreme Court said in Wren, sure, if you can come up with reason to pull someone over, then that's permissible. And that's when states, went and they decided that they would create a proliferation of laws to allow for the racialized stopping of people, right? And so there are patterns, there are conduct, but also I think it's incumbent upon us as, people who live in a community to push back on those laws, the way that those laws are implemented, the way that those laws are focused on by the police. Because the reality is they don't drive through my white neighborhood and say, your tail light is out, I'm gonna pull you over, unless you're Black. And then all of a sudden that law matters. So I hear what you're saying about what the Supreme Court has permitted, but there are ways to be back at it. And as a community, I hope that we would all have support for them not to continue to focus on Black and brown men for these very minor offenses that were only put on the law so that they could circumvent the Constitution, which protects us all.
Rocco?
Daily News, Rocco, Paris, Mr. Lambright. Regarding checkpoints, the issues that you raised, did you find them to be more egregious during checkpoint stops or less? And for those stops at checkpoints that you found issue with, were these stops generally conducted by the specialty teams? And then a second question, it's been mentioned in different monitoring reports through the years, and I've spoken to officers who, in the wake of the federal decision in stop and frisk, a lot of officers were not really fully trained. They didn't even know what would constitute a legal stop, when you could frisk someone, when you could stop someone. Is that an issue here as well, do you believe?
So to take the first question first, what we're focusing primarily on self-initiated stops rather than kind of the checkpoint stops. So, this is part of proactive, as they call it, policing, which feeds into kind of what we're talking about with the anti-crime units, who primarily engage in this proactive policing. And as you note, the stop and frisk monitor has found that the NYPD is especially bad when they are proactively policing pedestrians. So their rates of constitutionally stopping, frisking, and searching individuals is extremely poor when you get into the proactive policing than when they kind of respond to a call from a concerned citizen. So so we're primarily focused on that type of stops that are occurring. And as you mentioned before, we found a lot of the stops are occurring by these anti-crime units, NST, CRT, the units that were reconstituted by Mayor Adams, to engage in proactive policing and to engage in trying to recover guns, which they almost never do. And as the reporting has indicated, and as former NYPD officials have indicated, these units were created primarily to harass Black and brown people and Black and brown communities, and often act with impunity and act as though they don't have to follow the United States Constitution.
Anybody else? Okay, well, if you think of questions later, you know how to find us. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for standing up, you especially for standing up and fighting this. And stay tuned. Thank you.